The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Friday in the Riv after a tremendous Thursday with the sentencing on lack of sentencing, actually, of Jen Andrade. So that's got to be our top story of the day, right, CJ?
Well, there's nothing much more that we can talk about because I'll tell you now, it was a rather interesting case. And I will say for our viewers who kept asking me yesterday on the street, yes, there was a little bit of CPH. Very little, but there was a little CPH. When the judge had let on how he was going to decide this, Jen Andrade put her head in her hands and was openly crying. You could actually hear it over the microphone at times. The judge asked if she wanted to make a statement, and her attorney, Rankin, said that she'd been ready to read a statement to the court. But when it became clear that Woodlock was going to reject any plea, she didn't want to say anything. So it was rather interesting, I'll tell you now. I think one of the big things was that the sentencing opened up with the judge asking both the prosecution and the defense why they did not file their memos. They were supposed to file memos by June 8th, and they hadn't filed them. And he dressed them down. He dressed them down right away. So right off the bat, it was taking off on a bad rap. You know, it just took off on a bad taste already. But the judge was like, you need to meet your deadlines. You need to make sure that you're here. I want these. And Heffer said that he doesn't normally file a memo before sentencing. And the judge was like, that's not what I asked. I asked, where's the memo?
Yeah. In other words, I don't care what you normally do. Where's your memo? That's it. But, CJ, there's a tremendous amount of talk, and we can get into that because it's kind of confusing. I told you before we went on the air, I heard, people saying Flanagan was saying this, but Steve Saber was on, and I caught a little bit of what he was saying, and he said just exactly what you said. He said that both attorneys, both sides were surprised at the judge's right. They didn't anticipate it. He said, right. Well, the judge is the judge. He said, so they were taken aback. But look, we knew that this guy was tough before the trial started because a very good friend of mine and one of the best lawyers in the country, let alone the state, when I mentioned his name, he said, whoa, he's tough. And I think if he made it clear that he wants jail time, and that's what Steve Saber said.
He did make it clear that he wanted jail time. And as a matter of fact, the other thing was he became the defender of the people of Fall River. He said the people of Fall River paid her for a job, and instead they didn't get that. They didn't get the trust. They didn't get the faithfulness of the job. And he was talking about restitution to the city of Fall River. Yeah. Imagine that. Restitution to the city of Fall River. The city would get it, put it in the general fund, and spend it on salaries somewhere.
Yeah. But, and the irony of what you just said, the irony of this. So listen, viewers. A judge who has nothing to do with Fall River, no ties to Fall River, can see how corrupt these people are and said they have to have consequences for their actions. Yet we have people from Fall River, very influential people, including a state representative, pleading for no time for a person who pled guilty to felony charges. That is, to me, and you can have your own opinion, and obviously they don't, that's disgraceful. Because every single person that wrote a letter that said she shouldn't get time just crapped all over you and the citizens of Fall River. Because as CJ just said, this judge had more concern about what they did to the people and the taxpayers of Fall River than these clowns.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I have no problem doing what I'm about to do. And I'm going to make it very clear. I want the people to see the political hacks that are willing to support such corruption. Okay? One of the letters came in from Juan DaCosta, Tom Pasternak, owner of Walsh Pharmacy. He also serves the boards. Nicole Fontaine, Sophia R. Hunt. She is part of the Cambodian Relief Association. Roy Lima, Alan Sylvia, Mark Levin, attorney Mark Levin of Levin & Levin. They do work for the city. Lucia Dias, Jacqueline Andrade, Alexandra Andrade. I believe those are her daughters. Monica Souza, imagine that. Tabitha Mora, Katie McAvery, Abel Rigo, Ecclesiastes Moniz, and Matthew Magnil, Stephen Moniz, Sarah Pereira, and Frank Baptista. Hey, look at that. Another one. Frank Baptista. Maria Fatima Rigo, Megan Oliveira, David Rocha, Diane Tabacus, Jeffrey Marks. Now, Jeffrey Marks was interesting because I know Jeffrey. He's the owner of Mallard Printing. He ran for selectman in Somerset a couple of years ago, and Jen Andrade served as his campaign manager. Joe Afonso, Grace Cardoza, Tanya Melendez, Alfred Franco, Kathy Botello, Stacy Jacob, and Francisco Cabral. Now, here's the letter of doom, for the lack of a better expression, because it truly was a letter of doom. This came in from Holly McNamara, former selectman in Somerset. And I have to read this because she was standing up for the people of Fall River, and she's from Somerset. Honorable Douglas Woodlock, after reading the Herald News article today and learning that several upstanding citizens, including state representatives, have written to you in support of Jen Andrade in her sentencing tomorrow, Thursday, June 10th, I feel obligated to write in opposition to her request for no prison time. Had I known that writing a letter was an option, I would have done it much sooner than the night before. I apologize for the 11th hour message. I first became acquainted with Jen in 2016 when I ran for selectman in the town of Somerset. She ran the campaign of one of my opponents. I won the election and have been in office since, recently resigning due to personal attacks, bullying, and not wanting to partake in the unethical and potentially illegal activities of my new colleagues. I mention this as I feel it is important to note, since there is a very large, very tangible, and very tangled web that has been woven, and all parties are related. It is a very complicated scenario to describe, but having experienced what I have experienced over the past 5 to 6 years, I can confidently say that Jen Andrade and her allies do not deserve any mercy or remorse. Unfortunately, I only have tonight to explain to you via an email the complexity of everything I've learned over the past 5 to 6 years, but I strongly believe it is worth at least reaching out. Having been in public office, I have learned that sending strong messages, setting boundaries and examples, and leading by examples are all extremely important. Anything less simply enables people to continue to do what they want, practically getting away with murder. The abuse of power in today's world is disheartening, and the lack of accountability is very overwhelming. Good people simply don't want to run for office anymore. You are one of our only hopes. I am pleading with you that you send a strong message, not only to Jen, but also to the people that are on the ethical fence, leaning to go in the direction of Jen and Jazel. Please set the example that her involvement is completely intolerable and has major consequences. If this line isn't drawn now, it never will be. Otherwise, the line will continue to be more and more blurred as it has been. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. I pray that tomorrow sets the standard for consequences and that it gives hope to the rest of the good people that want to continue to help the communities. Respectfully, Holly McNamara, former selectman of the town of Somerset. I had to read it because that was the only letter, the only email, the only statement that was in support of a sentence, in support of giving her time. And that speaks volumes. And I'm sorry. But for a state representative to come out and support corruption, I don't care what he said in his letter. I've got a copy of his letter. I don't care what he said in it. That's a support of corruption. All those people, the 31 people that sent letters in, those are supports of corruption. And I cannot believe that a state representative would support such corruption. I would not believe that such members of the city's boards, that attorneys that represent the city would represent such corruption.
They're all
that would support it.
Hacks. They all had their head in a trough at some time or another. And congratulations, Holly McNamara for mayor of Fall River. I don't care if she doesn't live here. There should be accountability, but there is none. Therein lies the problem with this city. We have, as she said, a tangled web. We have an incestuous relationship between the housing authority and the city of Fall River. People slide back and forth there indiscriminately because we have a city official who's still on the board that was supposed to be removed and now became the chairman. So this is the problem we have. You figure why Fall River never gets better? This is like inbred Jedville over here. That's the problem. You know, it's truly incestuous. And let's look at this closely, CJ. As you said, it not only supports corruption and no accountability, it shows everybody what we always say. There is a double standard. Lori Loughlin couldn't go to jail. She did, ultimately, because a federal judge made her serve a little bit of time because she was too rich. Too beautiful. Her husband's a fashion designer or some other crap. And she was just too elite to be inconvenienced by jail, even though she committed a crime. She pushed two poor kids out of college by putting her two dips of children in college so they could have a good time. They wanted a 4-year time to get the college experience, not to get an education, to go to the games and go to the parties and get in the frats. And they're too good. And what's the other category? Politicians. How many politicians have we seen get off because they're politicians or they're movie stars or they're this or they're that? You think the average Joe would be getting off? You think any of these political hacks would be writing letters for leniency if for somebody from Corky Row or the Flint? A guy that has to go to work or a person who has to go to work every day and scratch 2 nickels together? It ain't happening, pal. And if I knew you could write a letter, I would have wrote a very short one. You do the crime, you got to do the time. And shame, especially on a state representative, to condone felonious activity, to abuse the power of the city of Fall River, to be one of the highest people in our governmental structure. 24 counts. And he got convicted on 21. And Jen Andrade and the rest of that merry band of felons all pleaded guilty. And you're writing she shouldn't do jail time? Why? As CJ said, I haven't read the letter yet. I read Holly McNamara's letter, and I read a couple, but I haven't read his yet because I got to get my Pepto-Bismol before I read it. So because I'm going to get diarrhea immediately because it's all BS. But I'll tell you what, this sends a message loud and clear when you read out those names. Every one of them. They've got radio shows that they're in with the city. They work for the city. So they got something from the city at some point in time, or they're looking for something from the politicians. That is just absolutely inexcusable, reprehensible, and mind-boggling that someone would let them do something to that Fall River, drag us through the mud and show how corrupt this city was to the entire country, and then say you shouldn't do jail time. It was like watching a rerun of The Sopranos or a mafia show or The Godfather. You're one of the family now. You just gave us some bribe money. You're one of the family.
Funny you should say that, because the prosecution referred to Jen Andrade as the consigliere, which is a reference to The Godfather.
Exactly.
To Jason Correa. They also made reference in the trial to Varsity Blues a lot. In other words, the Laura Loughlin case.
That's right.
And all of them got time. And one of the things and people are now saying that this judge should not hear the rest of this case if it goes forward, because he's already decided that she's guilty and she should get jail time. And
wait a minute, CJ, he hasn't decided anything. She pled guilty.
That's right.
Okay, go ahead.
That's right, she did. But people are already saying now the judge should recuse himself because he's already decided that she's guilty. And again, you're right. She pled guilty, but he decided that she's going to get jail time. He wants jail time, and I don't blame him. I want jail time. And I was surprised that he didn't just reject the plea and issue a sentence. A judge can do that. A judge can do anything they want. But instead, he sent it back. And he sent it back, and I heard this myself when he sent it back. I'm sending this back for trial. We're now back at square one. We now have, you're pleading not guilty again. And I'm sending this back for trial. The prosecution, or the government, as he refers to them, the government can decide whether or not to proceed with the trial. In other words, he gave the federal government the option of not prosecuting this woman because she doesn't want time. So she will, in essence, walk away free and clear if the federal government decides not to prosecute. The other thing they can do is they can just let the charges sit there for a while, and then somewhere down the road, accept a motion to dismiss from Rankin, and that goes away. And then she can never be charged again. So you've got a couple of things that can happen. Now, one of the big issues also that came out that the judge didn't mention it, but didn't say anything about, but was funny. Rankin turned around and said he did not see the Jason Correa trial. He did not read the transcripts. He knows nothing about it. He wasn't familiar with the trial at all and what occurred there. So I think that's funny, because how can he say he didn't pay attention to the trial when his own client was being on trial for similar charges? I don't know. It makes me say, what's going on. Well, the other thing that happened here was Rankin was making her look like a victim. He was trying to make her look like a victim.
Yeah.
And they say that she was a victim of Jazel's influence. I think maybe it goes two ways. I think that she influenced Jazel in many ways, and she admitted to influencing Jazel in many ways. And I think Jazel influenced her in many ways.
Well, look, the reality is that actually Steve Saber had a different opinion this morning about her getting off. He actually said, and I didn't watch the whole thing, I just heard it in passing for a few minutes. But I got to see if I can get that. I don't know if they replay that on a podcast, because he alluded to the fact that they could still deal with the sentencing and that his spin was she's not getting off. They're going to retry it, or they're gonna come up with something, and that they're not going to let this go. I find it hard to believe that the feds are going to let something go of this magnitude. But we go back to the Godfather. They said she was the consigliere, but I submit she wasn't, because that's someone who gives advice, and she's not really smart. She wasn't the person that really gave a lot of advice. She was the one that was, I would say she was the concierge.
Yeah, I think she's more of a concierge.
She was more of a concierge. That she was the one that escorted the people around, and she collected the money. But the thing is that, playing her as a victim is pretty hard to do when they've got sworn testimony saying that she was welcoming some of the people who were being extorted into the family. You're part of the family now. Does that seem like someone who is not an active participant? But, these things are all opinions. It's a legal mess. And again, Fall River is made to look like a 3-ring circus, probably a 15-ring circus, actually. But, again, the seedy underbelly of this city and the political corruption that continues to go on. Because remember, at the end of the trial, the feds made it very clear they are not through looking at Fall River.
That's right.
And hopefully they're looking really hard toward the housing authority. And I'll tell you, it doesn't look good for the city of Fall River. And Holly McNamara's letter was really a breath of fresh air, because a lot of those people that wrote those letters weren't even from Fall River. So they don't, they were personal friends. And look, I can see that the daughter's writing it. I want leniency, but the fact is there were crimes committed. And as Holly McNamara said, there has to be accountability. And therein lies the problem. There's never accountability. We had a guy that falsified an overtime sheet. Nothing happened. He kept his job, got a pay raise. Finally, he got ousted because he committed another crime, but it didn't have to do with the city, because believe me, if he did it with the city, he'd still be there. And now we look at the superintendent of schools. Did they get rid of him? No. How many people have we seen go up there and testify? We had a department head go up and testify that he misappropriated money during a trial.
And the mayor turned around and said very clearly, I'm not going to do anything to this until I read the transcript. We saw the trial. We heard him say it with his own mouth. But the mayor wants to read the transcript? Again, supporting corruption. This is what's going on. This is all supporting corruption.
You're right, CJ. I mean, there's no way around it. The fact is that they take care of each other. The old political strategy is, even though this guy screwed up, I'm gonna cut him some slack, because if I'm in the position, I want them to do that for me. They cover each other. There's a double standard. Movie stars, billionaires, politicians all have different. I mean, look at what's his name there, Eyeballs, and when they did the impeachment trial and the investigation, he lied. The FBI lied. The Steele dossier. They pulled warrants with misinformation. They weren't even legal. What they did. FBI, high-ranking officials. It shows one thing. Anybody in this country that doesn't think there is a caste system, that there are the haves and the have-nots, are nuts. You need institutional. You need to be institutionalized. If you think that you got the same rights as somebody with political power or money, you're delusionary. You're delusionary.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, this was an amazing. I felt, was sitting there watching this yesterday. I felt like we actually have an advocate for the people on the bench.
Yeah.
An advocate for the people on the bench. And that, whenever he said restitution for the city of Fall River, I was like, oh, my bleeding heart. I love this.
Well, yeah, but you're right, CJ. I said there's the greatest thing that ever came out of this whole mess is that we can look at this and see a judge who has no ties to Fall River, but actually has a brain and understands that when you commit a crime, there has to be accountability because he's a judge. And isn't it amazing that this guy who knows nothing, nobody that was affected, nothing, looked at this situation and had more concern for the people of Fall River than a state representative and a bunch of politicians?
That's right.
It's kind of a dichotomy. It's absolutely wonderful. It's astounding to see somebody make that statement about the people of Fall River. And he's not even from Fall River. So city council, people of Fall River, pay attention to what happened yesterday. We had a judge that knows no one in Fall River, that doesn't have any ties to Fall River, say he cares about what happened to us. Yet we have people here who supposedly represent the city say they don't care what happened to us. Let her off. I saw a quick aside. I was flipping the channels the other day, and I got one of those, those judge shows like Judge Judy, but it was Judge somebody else. And I just stopped to look at it because I caught it in the middle of the thing. And there was a guy there, and it showed the case. And I said, I got to listen to this because I always like to see the difference, this class warfare. Well, there was a guy there who rented a $3 million house for his teenage son to have a graduation party. And they destroyed the house in 2 hours. He said it was for 8 people, and they had like 200. And they destroyed the place. And then the people who owned that $3 million house were on the other side. But it was amazing to watch the perspective of these two people. Now, here's a guy who rented a $3 million house, who lived in a $2 million house, rented a house for his kid's graduation party, and then the other people, they won because they had pictures and documentation and videos and everything else, and the guy freely admitted it. But the attitude, the guy whose son wrecked the place is like, well, and the judge said, did you do anything to your son? He's sitting here in court, and he's cocky now. He said, it's nothing, no big deal. They destroyed a $3 million house. Well, we're going to make restitution, Your Honor. It's like no big deal for these people. And I look at that, and I'm thinking of the people who live in Corky Row on a 3rd floor walk-up, and looking at these people and their blasé attitude toward everything. It's like they don't give a shit. That's it. It's that simple.
Here's one of the things that's important, and as we're coming to the end of the show, I had to definitely say this. Jazel and his attorneys, because he did change his attorney, by the way. His attorney now is the same attorney that represented the Patriot State bomber. His attorney must be now thinking, we got to be very careful, because if this judge is going to be so strict on sentencing, what is he going to be looking at when he goes to sentencing in September? So they better be very careful. And I'm wondering who's going to write the letters of recommendation that he go lenient on him, because those people we're going to be calling out. We're definitely going to be calling those people out. Well, we're out of time, people. We could use another half hour, but such is life. This is going to be interesting. This is only going to get better and better. I want to thank you for watching. I want you to all have a great weekend. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and definitely hold your politicians accountable, especially if they supported Jen Andrade. Thanks for watching, and don't support corruption. Have a great day.